everybody, it's Irene with BrainStormAcres, and today I'm going to show you how I rabbit-proof our fences. Now, I've had several people ask me, how do you keep the rabbits out of your yard? Now, some people, when they first move out here, don't think it's a big deal. And they think, oh, they're such cute bunnies. Well, they are cute bunnies, and I love watching them. There's nothing cuter than watching a bunny rabbit wash its face. However, when you come out and they have stripped all the leaves off of your sweet potato plant, or some other such fun thing, it becomes less humorous, especially when you're actually planning to eat those things. So what we do, and we developed this a long time ago, we've been out here for over 15 years, and we've figured it out the hard way. We have, most of our fencing is 2 by, I think this is actually 2 by 3 holes. We have an assortment of fencing. This is actually a very lightweight version. Most of our stuff is horse fence, but to be honest, it was too expensive and we just needed to get this done. I could afford a full 50-foot roll of this for less than a quarter of what the same would have cost me for horse fence. Anyway, what I do is these have been driven in, this has been attached, and this has been attached with wire. Henry and I joke about this. We say we're going to take away your homesteading card if you insist on using zip ties, because zip ties don't last. Zip ties are only for temporary installations. If you're putting up a small trellis that doesn't have a lot of weight to it, and you're at sea level, and you're using stabilized zip ties, they're actually stabilized against the effects of the sun, great. It'll last for probably the season, and then it'll be super easy to break off or cut off. If you are putting up something that is supposed to be a permanent or semi-permanent installation, for gosh sakes, use wire or wire clips. There's an assortment of different types of metal clips that are available for attaching fences to T-posts. Our friend is this old-fashioned iron binding wire. Does it ever croak? Yeah, you can make it croak if you bend it too much. It'll eventually work harden and break, but it lasts. And I see all these blasted homesteaders, obviously straight out of the city, using all these frickin' zip ties, and it drives me crazy. Because we did one time, when we were working on the greenhouse, we did a temporary install of lights. We had a bunch of LED lights that we had picked up at Home Depot, and we just threw them up there. We couldn't find the strapping we were looking for at the time, and they were supposed to be UV resistant zip ties. I would say a month and a half later, walked out in the greenhouse, because one of the problems with temporary installations is a lot of times they're not so temporary, and every single one of those LED lights was hanging from the electrical wires. Now, no damage was done. We got out there and fixed it right away, but don't use zip ties. They were never intended to do heavy-duty work. They were never intended to do any kind of long-term outside installs. They were intended, the first time I was ever aware of zip ties was they were used for controlling cables in computer offices. You zip tie, you had this big pile of cables, and you used this zip ties to hold them together into nice, neat bundles so that you weren't tripping over things. That's what they were designed for. They're awesome. We have a stack of them. We use them all the time inside for really temporary installations, and they're great for computer cables. But they were never intended to be used outside. And even the UV resistant ones, if you are operating above sea level, we are 5,280 feet above sea level here. we get a huge number of cloud-free days. Therefore, the UV here is amazing in a bad way. You know, I know that these tubs that I've got out here with tomatoes in, with potatoes in it, I'll be really lucky if they'll last 2 years. They're old to start with, and the sun is going to destroy them. But that's okay. They're an expendable item. But when you're putting up something like fence, for God's sake, don't use something like zip ties. If you need a third hand, okay? Sometimes you're working by yourself and you need a third hand, there's no other person there to help you. A zip tie makes a great third hand. But once you've got something held in place so that you can do it, it's no different than using a clamp. You put the clamp there to hold something while you're doing something because you need an extra hand, but you don't relieve the clamp there forever. You need to add real clips or pieces of wire to hold the things in place. Now, how do I do this? I have here a piece, this is just a scrap left over from some other project, and this is a scrap of chicken wire. I have this fence all set, all wired in place, and I am going to take about 6 inches, this is a 2-foot wide strip. I'm going to take about 6 inches of the bottom of this chicken wire and bend it. Because I want this chicken wire to lay on the ground in this track that I've created by digging next to the fence. Now I'm going to make sure that this existing chicken wire has already been wired to the fence. I'm going to make sure that there's an overlap. I always overlap, usually, I usually overlap at least 3 or 4 inches because it's just safer that way. Put a needle on my gloves because I do not want a needle on stickers. Hold this in place with my left foot because feet are excellent at these sort of things. And I'm going to get one piece of wire in place on here just to hold it a little bit. I'm going to hook it around one of the fence wires and hook it around one of the chicken wire wires, and I'm going to create a spiral with my fingers. Now, I have to admit it's a little rough on your fingers. I've done this a lot, so I'm used to it, but still, if I wind up doing this all day, I will switch to using a pair of pliers to do some of the twisting, because it'll eventually sort of eat your fingers. But I've now got this attached to the fence. Now what this does is 2 things. It attaches it to the fence, but the big thing is it keeps the rabbits from coming through here. Have I ever had a rabbit get through? Yes, I have. I have had, last year, a teenage rabbit figured out that I had not put these pieces of wire tight enough together. So there I am down here. I think you can see, let's see, there. I don't worry about whether I cut my head off or not. What I'm concerned about is that people can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to hook it around a vertical, and I'm going to hook it around a horizontal piece of the chicken wire, and I'm literally just creating a spiral. Now this one here is a little short, and it's therefore trying to eat my fingers. So we can fix that. We have the technology. It's called a pair of pliers. And this doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be jewelry quality work. What you're trying to do is you're trying to create something that will hold this chicken wire against the other fence. My one clever teenage bunny last year, what he figured out was that I had one section on the east side of the garden where there was probably a 2-foot section that didn't have any, I think of these as twist ties. They're not twist ties, they're actually wire, and they're very sturdy, but didn't have any wire ties on it. And what that allowed is it allowed this to gap away from the fence. And he was able to push through from the outside, sneak over the top of the 2-foot fence, because this winds up being a little less than 2 feet, and get into the garden. And he chomped my sweet potato plants. Now, the sweet potato plants did survive, and so did the rabbit. He did get scared because he got chased, and we actually caught him in the yard, and then I had to figure out where the heck he'd gotten in, and that's when I realized what had happened. So I make sure that I put about every 6 to 10 inches a piece at the top, and I also do the same thing down at the bottom, because I want to make sure that it's not super easy for them to push the wire aside. You don't want them to be able to push the wire aside. Then, once a section is done, I get in and I take rocks, because we have rocks here, lots of them. And I hold down the chicken wire with rocks. And as I'm cleaning out sections, I'll collect these rocks together. I've got a little pile over there. They're not good enough, but most of them are too small. But you'll see this whole edge here is held in place with rocks. And as I do more cleaning and stuff, I'll pile more on there. Now, you do have to pay attention to this. They are capable, over time, they being the rabbits, of digging this out. It does not keep everything out. It will not keep out squirrels, although, believe it or not, the ground squirrels around here don't climb all that well. The ground squirrels tend to not, like, this slows them way down. It confuses them somehow. They know how to go through a fence, although this is a little small for your larger ground squirrels to go through easily. So it really slows them down. They're not that great at climbers. They're ground squirrels. They're not tree squirrels like we used to have on the East Coast. So it slows them down. And that's all you can ask for with squirrels. Our solution for squirrels is traps and a 22. That's just the nature of the beast here. If you want your garden to survive, you have to be willing to defend it. But this is all I do. I attach the top. I make sure this is down in the dirt. I don't always dig a trench, because this was a new installation. We decided we would do a trench this time. Sections of our regular yard, some of those sections did not have a trench associated with it. I just laid the flat on the ground, and if I had trouble, like if the dirt was particularly loose in an area and the rabbits were tending to dig through, I would add maybe a piece of flagstone or something that was bigger, that would cover a greater area. But a lot of how much you need to defend an area depends on the environment. So what I mean by that is, if we are having a very dry summer and the monsoon rains have not come and there is not much greenery outside of our yard for anything to eat, our yard will become a bigger target than if it's a nice, moist summer. That's not to say that they're still not interested in the garden, but it's just less of a target than if they're really desperate. I have seen jackrabbits stand on their hind legs. Now, if you know, jackrabbits are big. I have seen jackrabbits stand on their hind legs and strip the bottom leaves off of fruit trees before. Yeah, our fruit trees. So they can do a lot of damage, depending on how desperate they are. If they're not as desperate, it's easier to keep them out. Obviously, there's nothing we can do about how desperate they are. That's a factor of nature and the weather. But this works. It's enough. If you find that you have larger rabbits that are more clever than mine are, put it up higher. There used to be sections where I had the entire outside covered with chicken wire, and that does dramatically reduce what can come into your yard. But it doesn't ever stop anything, because obviously rats and stuff like that can scurry right through everything. They'll just climb this like crazy and go through. There's a limit to what you can do. That's where rat traps come in handy. But I hope this gives you some ideas about how you can keep critters out of your yard. You have to know how they're getting in. Are they coming in under? Are they coming in through? Or are they coming in over? And then you design your fencing to deal with that. So I hope this helps. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and we'll see you next time, because we got lots going on this spring. Until then, bye. I saw that. Thank you.